Welcome to HTO Football. I'm Andrew Timbrell, and on this episode, Tom Whitford and I speak to reporter and French football anorak Jonathan Johnson. We talk about the domestic landscape in France, PSG in limbo, and of course, some transfer news. Enjoy.
Welcome to HTO Football, Jonathan. Fantastic to have you on. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And yourselves, thanks for having me on.
Not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Looking forward very much to the start of the Premier League again. Obviously, it's been a big period for the whole of the continent, and there's different levels of whether it should be returning or not. But I think as a core level, as a football fan, very much looking forward to it returning. Aston Villa first up. I believe a bit of an affinity there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the club that I grew up supporting. So, to be perfectly honest, I think the only way the Villa were going to get out of relegation was to play that game in hand. And I think had we not had the game in hand because of the cup final, it might have been a bit easier for the decision to end the season early. It would have made that a bit more straightforward. So, I guess from a Villa staying in the Premier League point of view, got to be grateful that we're still going to get a shot at it, because it was looking pretty hopeless before the break. We lost form massively, and despite the positive of a League Cup final, it didn't look like our Premier League return was going to last more than a season.
So with the Premier League return, Jonathan, what's the feeling in France with a lot of the national leagues obviously restarting? The French football fans feeling a little bit lost at the moment.
Bit stupid. It's. I think the thing is at the moment with the decision made in France is that they're not really going to know if it was the right decision to make until a lot further along the line. So at this moment in time, the feeling is a bit of bewilderment, really, looking around Europe at all the other major leagues, how they're returning to play, or at least they're going to attempt to return to play. And the French clubs at the moment, as well as there being a load of different clubs seeking legal action because of the decision to bring about the end of the season early, there's also a load of clubs asking, particularly Lyon, asking if it's going to be fair for them and PSG to return to Champions League action, given that they're going to be, so far behind their European rivals by the time that the Champions League does resume and sort of play out from the quarterfinal, the round of 16, and then the quarterfinal stages onwards. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty at the moment, a lot of frustration. Because of that, there's a lot of recrimination as well. A lot of people pointing fingers. I don't really see that mudslinging dying down anytime soon. So I think at this moment in time, France is a good example of how not to end your season early. Because if at the end of the day, it's not necessarily the wrong decision to end things early in France. At the end of the day, if the government says we cannot allow for any collective sports to be played until September, then I think everybody should have united behind that. The big problem for France was that not everybody united behind that. And in fact, after putting on something of a semi-united face to start with, everyone's pretty much gone their own ways and come out with their own opinions, which has completely undermined the decision. French football would have been better off staying in limbo and waiting to see what happened elsewhere in Europe before making their decision, than making the decision they've made and then having all of this mess that followed. There were TV deals cut short. Like I've already mentioned, a bunch of different clubs, pursuing legal action. It's just been very, very messy.
What's the latest regarding Toulouse and Amiens? Is there any updates on that?
Well, there's expected to be an update from the Court of Appeals today. So this is a Monday, or tomorrow, which will be a Tuesday. So there is potential to sort of have some development very soon on that front. But to be honest, at this moment in time, I don't see any way of them being able to finish the 2019-20 season on the pitch. There's been some suggestion that they might finish it via a playoff system. Okay, at a push, I might be able to see that being feasible to determine something like European qualification. But even then, considering the decision was already made, certain teams have been told that they're already going to be in Europe next season. That's going to bring on a whole load of other, legal challenges. So for me, I think the most likely outcome, if there was to be some sort of action based on the stuff that's gone to court recently, I'd say that it would probably be an enlarged Ligue 1 for next season, so with more teams than usual. Whether that happens or not, we'll have to wait and see. Ligue 2 recently, the presidents all voted unanimously that Ligue 2 should be expanded, and then the French Football Federation with the casting vote said no. So that's just, it kind of gives you an illustration of just how futile, in many ways, some of the sort of decision making within domestic French football can feel for a lot of the leaders of these clubs.
I guess the irony might be that the French football might be looking slightly, we're not wanting any tragic outcomes, of course, but actually the success of other leagues may actually undermine them slightly. It wouldn't probably do them any disfavour if there was a couple of incidences that prove that, we were right to call it. And actually, if all these leagues go off without a hitch now on their return, that's only going to add to the pressure, I imagine. So, like I say, without wanting to wish foul on anyone anywhere, I imagine there might be some eyes looking and saying, well, actually, it wouldn't do them, let's just say, any harm if there was some slip-ups elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I can see what you're saying, and there is going to be a lot of scrutiny towards particularly the Premier League and La Liga in the next couple of weeks when they come back, because those two countries were, at the end of the day, worse affected than somewhere like Germany, where the Bundesliga has been able to make a reasonably successful return so far. So I think the hardest is yet to come in terms of some of these leagues actually getting back into action. And yeah, of course, like I said, it's difficult to say right now whether it was the right decision or not. And morally, it may well turn out to have been the right decision in France. However, from a football point of view, when you consider that all the other leagues are at least trying to get their seasons finished, at this moment in time, it was a rush decision, and that's solely from the football point of view. It's a matter of fact that if all the other leagues finish, or at least try to finish, and the French league doesn't, and the Champions League does come back, France's two remaining representatives in European football are going to be at a disadvantage. The other side of the coin, I guess, is that going into next season, the French clubs will be able to enjoy a relatively full pre-season in July. So they, in theory, should be in better shape and less fatigued going into the 2020-21 season.
I mean, talking of the sort of issues with your beloved club PSG at the moment, I mean, they're in a bit of a dilemma, aren't they, Jonathan? Because they're potentially having to prepare for Champions League fixtures without any competitive action in place. Isn't it August? I think the Champions League rumoured date of return, maybe. How do you see that club moving forward in the next sort of month or so, with obviously contract issues, transfers, and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, the expected return date for the Champions League is around mid-August. The expected start date for Ligue 1 for the 2020-21 season is the end of August. So that would give PSG, sort of bearing in mind that they're aiming to return to training on the 22nd of June, it gives them pretty much 5 weeks, so from the end of June to all through July, to play some friendlies, get themselves in shape. But it's one thing being in good enough shape, to sort of start a domestic season that they're expected to dominate in, and another for them to go up against, one of Europe's best teams who have potentially been back in league action for over a month, and expect them to sort of win out. I mean, we don't even know yet whether it's going to be in the same format as usual, whether it's going to be a two-legged affair or if it's just going to be a one-legged thing. So it's very hard to see exactly what scenario PSG are preparing themselves for at the moment. Obviously, we'll know more once UEFA have spoken about it in a couple of weeks' time. But it's a complicated situation for PSG to get themselves ready for. And it's made even more complicated by the fact that they've got a number of key players who are approaching the end of their contracts. So PSG are also in a situation where they have to try and either negotiate to keep them until the end of the Champions League action, which might not be attractive if they're told that they're not going to be handed a contract extension, or they just decide to soldier on without them. In attack, it's a little less pressing now. The issues now that the Mauro Icardi transfer has gone through, he's been acquired full time. But when you're looking at a defence that's probably going to lose Thiago Silva, Thomas Meunier, and Levin Kurzawa, it's without any obvious recruits to sort of replace them. It's going to be a tough ask for PSG to make it further than the Champions League quarterfinals.
Yeah, is there any light on where those three might be heading, Jonathan, at the back?
There's been plenty of speculation linking Kurzawa with a move to the Premier League. It wouldn't surprise me if that actually does happen. Meunier's been the subject of interest from Borussia Dortmund for a long time, but he's also been linked with a move to Tottenham Hotspur. More recently, Jose Mourinho is apparently a big fan of his. So, that's another possible one to watch. And with Silva, the problem is when you get to the age that he's at, paid the money that he's paid, it is very difficult for a club, even in a normal climate, to sort of meet those demands. And when you add that to what's been going on recently with the coronavirus as well, I find it very difficult to think that any European club is going to offer Silva anywhere near what he's been earning with PSG. So it wouldn't actually surprise me if we end up seeing him go back to Brazil, which is something he said he definitely wants to do before the end of his career. Right. I don't think there's any club in Europe at the moment that has as strong a need for somebody like Silva as, with Cavani, for instance, where he'd be an obvious good fit for Atletico Madrid and the sort of football that Diego Simeone plays.
I was going to say maybe the Icardi arrival sort of signals the departure of Cavani naturally, I guess.
Yeah, it does, but obviously, it brings a certain amount of sadness as well, because if he doesn't get offered a contract extension and doesn't get kept on for the remainder of the Champions League campaign, then that means that Cavani, who's been one of PSG's best acquisitions under Qatari ownership, won't really get the send-off that he deserves at Parc des Princes until much, much later. So, this obviously brings plenty of complications with it. Cavani's keen to see out the remainder of the Champions League campaign with PSG, but until all the players actually get back to France and PSG can hold talks face-to-face with these guys, there's no guarantee that they even will be there for the remainder of the European term.
You were saying to me the other day that with Icardi's arrival that maybe sort of gives Mbappe a chance to find a new role maybe in that side.
Well, the thing is, Mbappe has been moving progressively more central over the course of the last season or so, pretty much since he arrived at PSG. He's become more and more of a central figure in the project and in what's been happening on the pitch. And I think it's only logical that he will end up playing through the middle, as most players like that do. I mean, Ronaldo started out wide and ended up playing through the middle.
It reminds me
now
of
very dominant.
Henry as well, doesn't it? The Henry links. Yeah,
Henry is another good example. Ronaldo as well, although Ronaldo was played centrally from a very, very early age. But in any case, I'm not convinced that Icardi will stay long term with PSG. There's a clause in his contract that stipulates that PSG would have to pay Inter Milan 15 million euros extra if they were to sell him in either of the first two transfer windows. So that would be the next winter transfer window and then the next summer transfer window. So potentially from the winter of 2022. He might be eligible to move then, or PSG could move him on and not worry about having to owe Inter some money. I see that as a possibility, but that would solely depend on Mbappe's situation and him renewing his contract with PSG. And at this moment in time, the situation between Mbappe and PSG is that Mbappe is happy with the progress made this season in the Champions League, getting to the quarterfinals, but with the Champions League campaign not being finished yet, it's hard to gauge exactly how much progress has been made. So he won't be committing his future to the club until he has a definite idea of sort of where the club is going and what their next move might be.
I mean, there's obviously a busy spell ahead, isn't there? I mean, obviously, with the domestic window now opening in France, That's obviously going to trigger off a lot of deals, isn't there? I saw a name from the past being linked with. Is it Dijon? I think Djibril Cissé, 38 years of age. Is there something in that? Or there's a name from the past.
Yeah, I mean he's somebody who is still going incredibly. I think he's still playing in Switzerland, and Dijon have been linked with a move for him. I know that he's been quite vocal about getting back into French football. I think he's a few goals shy of breaking a record, so he's got a bit of an incentive there. I think he was actually quoted just over a month ago or something like that as saying that he would play for free if it gave him a shot at scoring these 3 goals to reach this landmark. So, I mean, I think that French clubs that don't have a lot of money, so that's pretty much everyone apart from the likes of PSG and Monaco, assuming that they move on a boatload of players, which is what they're hoping to do this summer. Other than that, there's not really any clubs who obviously have a lot of money to throw around. So, there are going to be clubs looking to turn up bargains. And, if a proven goal scorer like Djibril Cissé says he fancies another crack at Ligue 1, and he's fit enough, then, I think there are going to be clubs who might take him up on that. I mean, in Dijon as well, where you've got sort of a new sporting direction coming in, another blast from the past. Peggy Lewin-Dula has been named sporting director there. So it's, I think that in France at this moment in time, I mean, this transfer window itself is giving French clubs as much time as possible to balance their books, because in French football, you have to go before the French financial watchdog by the end of June. And if your books aren't balanced, then you could face administrative relegation and not being able to start the season in the league that you're supposed to be starting in. So this transfer window opening now allows teams to sort of address their financial needs and potentially sell within the country, to domestic rivals in order to get their books in order. So,
I was going to say to that end though, because last 2 or 3 seasons, French football has been increasingly sort of plundered by Europe's top clubs for young talents, and actually, does this give an opportunity for a lot of that talent to stay within France? Because actually, nowhere else is doing business. Everywhere else has got their eyes still on finishing this season, and actually, in the next sort of 5-6 weeks, maybe actually a lot of that business can be done internally.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to get around to, because with the bigger clubs that do have a bit of money to throw around, say your PSGs and your Monacos, depending on which players they get rid of, they could look within France and find players that could fill their positions of need, and not spend an absolute fortune. So yeah, you're right. It does give French football a stronger chance of keeping some of their best young talents, and also there's a lot of French clubs who aren't going to be able to wait around until other European clubs are able to move for their players, because if they need to have the money sort of in their accounts on the books by the end of the month, they're going to be under pressure to make their moves as quickly as possible.
I mean, you mentioned obviously Monaco a minute ago, Jonathan, with the boat metaphor. I like that one. Obviously, the Leipzig sporting director's been linked. What do you know about him? Is that a good move? I mean, I know Leipzig in the last 3 or 4 years have been doing some fantastic things, haven't they? You've got.
It depends on how you view their fairy tale rise through the ranks of German football. Some people like it, some people don't. It's not the most organic, but yeah, Paul Mitchell, so former Spurs sporting director, obviously worked at Southampton as well before having started out originally at MK Dons. He's been targeted as the new sporting director for Monaco. That means that Monaco are either going to have to buy him out of his contract at Leipzig, or he'll have to resign in order to join. But the challenge that will be facing him is he'd be going from, I mean, basically, he made a bit of a sideways move within the Red Bull organization last summer. He went from being the guy who brought in all of the talents for Leipzig to being the guy who basically masterminds where all of the players within the Red Bull football clubs move all around the world. So it's not just Leipzig, that includes Salzburg, includes Bragantino in Brazil, New York Red Bulls as well. So it's, he had a more strategic role there than one of talent identification. But at Monaco, he'd sort of be in charge of all of that. He'd be in charge of somehow building up enough money from within the squad that they have by getting rid of a lot of those players, being able to bring in new talents, but also being able to farm out the youngsters to their satellite clubs, their Club Brugge in Belgium. So, you could see why it would be quite appealing. And when you also bear in mind that it sounds like Leipzig are going to be losing Timo Werner to Chelsea. There's been long-standing links between Ralf Rangnick, who's sort of the only person, I guess, more senior than Mitchell in the Red Bull hierarchy. He's been strongly linked with a move to AC Milan. So if the two of them were to leave Red Bull, Werner was to leave as well, that would be a massive blow. I mean, I know that it's been it's a bit of a coup to keep someone like Upamecano for a bit longer by signing.
I was going to say, yeah. I mean, I'd love to see him in the Premiership. Yeah, fantastic defender.
I mean, they've got some very, very good players. I mean, they know the French market well, and of course that also speaks in Mitchell's favour ahead of this potential move to Monaco. He has a track record of identifying excellent, if not French, then French-speaking talent, and bringing it into various clubs. And I think that I've said for a long time the most important position at Monaco is not that of coach. It's that of sporting director, because the only way the Monaco project can work is if they bring in players who are ready for first team football, immediately use them, immediately add value to them, and then sell them on within a short space of time, either 1 or 2 seasons. And they're going to need to get those players to be fetching the same amounts of money that they were when it was Luis Campos of Lille, who might also be on the move this summer, when he was sort of overseeing that project. And Monaco were printing money at one point with some of the players that they were, they were bringing through and selling on. So it's a tall order, but I think it's one that could work again when you consider the strong position that Monaco will be in if they can get a lot of their biggest earners off of the books, because there's a lot of players there who don't necessarily justify the money that they earn. I'm thinking about Golovin, who was a bit of a flash in the pan at the Russia World Cup. Fabregas, as much as he's a great character to have in French football, is paid a lot for somebody who's not particularly mobile on the pitch these days. And people like Kamil Glik, we've seen Subasic leave already. Guys who helped Monaco win the title a couple of years ago, but haven't really done anything since, apart from get older and less mobile. So it's I think I can see why it would appeal to somebody like Mitchell, especially if the Red Bull hierarchy sort of seems to be going through a load of changes.
Yeah. So one French talent that seems to be cropping up on a lot of the European club's radar at the moment is, you're going to have to help me out with this one, Jonathan, is the 17-year-old at PSG, Adil
Oshish.
Yeah, I've been trying to practice it.
I mean, he's a very talented kid, in high demand, knows what he wants, and what he wants is to stay at PSG for a little bit longer to try and establish himself in the senior setup. The problem is that those opportunities or guarantees of those kind of opportunities are very hard to come by. PSG are having a real battle at the moment, keeping their hands on Tanguy Kouassi, who, in fact, I think the situation between PSG and Kouassi may well have been aided by the fact that there's now some uncertainty in the Red Bull hierarchy, because it had looked, to all intents and purposes, like he was going to move on and sign his first professional contract elsewhere. So at the moment, Rashish is the sort of the big homegrown star that PSG could potentially lose this summer. And the latest is that PSG may well have agreed to loan him out somewhere, potentially within Ligue 1, because there are clubs who want to give him first team football now, notably Saint-Etienne. He could end up signing professional terms, being loaned out, and then PSG will obviously watch his development closely and see if they can bring him back, in a season's time and try and, make a go of it with him in the senior setup. I mean, to be so talented at such a young age, he could easily play sort of 2 seasons of first team football in Ligue 1, still not even be 20, and either come back and have a crack at the PSG first team, or move on elsewhere and be a star somewhere else. So, I think if that is the possibility that's being talked up, it would be a good move for all parties. But obviously PSG have this, this very checkered history of bringing through good young talent and then keeping it. There's only been a few examples, the likes of Rabiot, the likes of Kimpembe, the likes of Areola, and even 2 of those 3 guys, have not even been playing their football at Parc des Princes this season. So it's something that PSG really do need to address, and it would be a big loss if Ashish did slip through their fingers. But it sounds at this moment in time like there could be a deal done where he extends his contract but gets a guaranteed loan move that's going to see him get the sort of first team exposure that he needs.
Talking of getting deals done, I don't know if you saw the article around sort of the transfer room application that Premier League clubs have sort of started to buy into a little bit, and online speed dating for football transfers in the remote world that we're in. What do you think about that?
You know what? It's really funny you asked me about that. Obviously, having gone to university together at the University of Hertfordshire, it's funny how sometimes old connections come back and sort of make an appearance sort of 10 years or more down the line. And actually, somebody I went to university with recently contacted me, who's a part of the transfer room
really?
app, and yeah, I mean, it's something I wasn't that aware of until recently when I got this message on LinkedIn. So I checked it out, and it's a very interesting concept. I mean, basically,
you swiped right, Jonathan. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's for clubs to be able to sort of cut out going to the agent, going straight to the club, or for the clubs to basically be advertising who's available is. I mean, it's almost kind of becoming more Football Manager like. It's like go to your player search, who's transfer listed, who's loan listed.
Set the stats to a certain number.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost like that. And, I think that sort of thing has a certain value, especially at times like these, because the clubs need to be saving money wherever they can. And if you're saving money by not putting it in the pockets of agents who are not exactly going to push the deal that much further on, it's I think it is something that at this moment in time is
cuts out the middleman.
A particularly useful tool. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you look at like stuff like Moneyball and the Oakland's athletics team, and data analysis to drive sports success, and like you just kind of think it's coming, isn't it? And like you said, and we make the Football Manager sort of connections there, but actually, I think sort of scouts being out in a stadium somewhere in a far-flung place not only is not impossible right now because of coronavirus, but actually is probably going to be a thing increasingly of the past anyway. So I think, as in all walks of life, I think this episode has been pushing people to think a bit differently, and I think football's no different. So be interested to see what else changes. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were speaking about how this, the French way of approaching the transfer window is already kind of thinking outside the box, and how some clubs in France are going to get inventive about things. I think clubs across the board are going to have to start doing that, because it's not only France that's been financially affected by this. And also, it's not like French football was in the worst financial state in comparison to some other leagues anyway before all of this. At the end of the day, Ligue will still benefit from a massive bumper new TV deal at the start of next season, assuming that the campaign can get underway on time. So that will put clubs in a better sort of medium to long-term position, even if the short-term position is a bit precarious. But long-term, there are going to be a lot of clubs who have to think, strategically, how are they going to continue to do all these things, and with not only stuff like transfer room, but also people moving more towards stats-based stuff. I know the guys at Stats Bomb, do a great job. Opta have sort of moved towards sort of doing more individualized stats-based analysis. And you've got other stuff online as well, like Y Scouts and stuff like that. Of course, it's going to make. I wouldn't say it's going to make scouting a thing of the past, but it's going to make it sort of a more of a non-essential tool for clubs moving forward, if it's something that they feel, or the coaching staff and the recruitment staff feel that they can do sort of from the comfort of their office, instead of going out to some obscure country to maybe get a 15-minute glimpse at a player.
Anything to make it more like Football Manager, I'm up for. Really, it gives us all a chance, doesn't it? Just before we wrap up, Jonathan, I know I'd like should Arsenal fans get excited with the arrival of William Saliba?
I think he is definitely one of French football's most talented up and coming stars. I think he is somebody who is ready for a new challenge, or will be ready for a new challenge in the near future. He's gone almost as far as he's going to be able to go with Saint-Etienne in the current state that they're in. I worry a little bit about too much being expected of him too soon, because there is there's always a lot of buzz whenever Arsenal sign a player, particularly from France, given the sort of historic links. But especially one who sort of lives up to the hype, as Saliba did before some of his injury issues in the season just gone. So I'd say as long as he's able to put those fitness issues behind him, I think that he will turn into a very good signing. I definitely have more confidence in somebody like him than somebody like Mavropanos. I don't know too much about him, obviously, in the same way that I know about
somewhere
Saliba,
in Germany. They're thinking of making it permanent, maybe somewhere in Germany, isn't he? I think.
So that doesn't surprise me, and it's something that we've seen sort of repeat itself in the past at Arsenal, when certain gambles have been made on some young players. And I was reading a recent article on The Athletic about the Brazilian scout who somehow managed to infiltrate the Arsenal hierarchy, and then didn't have that much success with some of the players that he eventually got them to buy. But as the article said, it's always a risk, when you're buying into potential talent. But the great thing about Saliba is that it's not only potential that Arsenal are buying into. You can see the talent that he has, and he's been able to show that already, over the course of a couple of seasons with Saint-Etienne. So I think it's a very good move, and I think he will be ready for it. It's just a shame that he didn't get to finish off the remainder of this campaign because of the way that everything has gone, and he may well not be able to play in the cup final for Saint-Etienne, which would be a fitting farewell.
So basically, Tom, we've got the new Tony Adams on our hands, so it's all good.
Absolutely, that's it. And I think the danger is that, as you've just rightly alluded to, Jonathan, with Arsenal as well, we've had quite a lot of. I dispute the fact that we've had rubbish defenders for the last 20 years, which is what you often get Arsenal fans saying. But what we've had is young, talented defenders, and very often coming into very unstable backline of quite an unstable club, but certainly an unstable defensive unit, and that doesn't help. Because my fears with Saliba are very similar in the sense that he may have all the talent in the world, but at that age and that profile and that experience level, i.e. not phenomenally experienced, my fear is that he's still going to come into a team that probably isn't necessarily the most drilled defensive unit, and that's never going to help a young talented defender. So we'll see. But
Arteta, I think it might change. Hopefully
so.
Thanks a lot, Jonathan. That's been fantastic.
And I really appreciate having you on,
guys. It's been an absolute pleasure, and would love to come back on at some point.
As a quick reminder, we are running our first competition, a chance to win a copy of Zonal Marking by Michael Cox. For all the details, check out our usual social channels, HTO Football. We are also taking time for tea later this month and supporting Bob Wilson's fantastic charity, the Willow Foundation. Again, all the details on our usual social channels, and please give generously if you can. Speak soon.